Well, hello, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Our next trolley stop is here, and our next trolley stop is now. Welcome back to another all-new episode of PR from the Heart's children's book spotlight series. To be precise, we have reached episode number 161. That is the 161st trolley stop here at PR from the Heart in the children's book spotlight series. It is two of our most favorite times of the year because we are officially kicking off PR from the Heart's holiday season celebration. Raise your hand if you are happy and full of joy that the holiday season is now upon us. We see many hands on screen, hands from the little ones as well too. Hands from Dr. Katrina King-Evans, our featured guest, who's going to be joining us momentarily as well. And also, it is the start of National Family Literacy Month. One of the greatest feelings that you can see, whether you are a parent of a little one or you're a caregiver of a little one, is the magic that happens when families connect together through the love and joy of reading. And of course, we are excited to be able to share some wonderful, wonderful things with you over the course of these next several weeks leading into the end of 2022. And I was thinking, leading into our trolley stop today, sometimes, many times, we want to fit in, right? We want to take the time and do what we need to do to be able to fit in so that we can feel loved and special. But in truth, and of course, our dear friend and neighbor, the late Mr. Rogers, of course, always reminds us still that you're loved and you're special just the way that you are. So there is a brave little boy, one of several children that we're going to be introduced today through episode number 161 of the children's book Spotlight series, a brave boy by the name of Sammy. And I want to quote Sammy directly because Sammy is a wise young man and an old soul, I believe, as well, too. He says, "Think about it, guys. If everyone looked and acted the very same way, this would be a very boring world to live in." So thanks to one of our newest neighbors here at PR from the Heart and some amazing children who are very much wise beyond their years, they're reminding us, we're remembering that it's important to recognize that we're special just the way that we are, that being different isn't necessarily a bad thing. So we encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow shining stars, to be able to head on over to Amazon.com and to purchase your copy of Different Us, an amazing new children's book. We also encourage you to be able to leave a 5-star review if you feel guided to do so for Different Us, as that is one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for our featured guest here. The trolley, of course, every once in a while we travel really far. So I believe this is the first time, if I'm not mistaken, possibly in the near 4+ year history of the children's book Spotlight series, that we actually head out to the beautiful state of Alabama. So the trolley travels across the country from San Diego to Alabama, as we have the opportunities and the pleasure and the privilege to welcome aboard as our featured guest here on episode number 161 of the children's book Spotlight series, children's author, Dr. Katrina King-Evans. Do you prefer, this is a wonderful question, is that when people have the doctor in front of their name, sometimes people prefer the doctor. Do you prefer Dr. Katrina or do you prefer Katrina with our conversation?
Whatever flows naturally. If Katrina flows naturally with you, I'm all for it.
I love that. I love that because, sometimes when people are doctors, like no, you must call me doctor kind of thing. And then if you don't say the doctor, it's a matter of oh, I might have offended the person, so to speak. So
no, you're perfectly fine.
Thank you
Katrina's
so much.
Fine.
Thank you so much for sharing this wonderful message, Katrina. And before we dive into the pages of Different Us and share your story in the process, just a few housekeeping notes. If these messages that we're already communicating with you, myself and Katrina, the message of being loved and special just the way that you are, that being different isn't necessarily a bad thing, and there's so much more that we're going to be talking about. But if this is already starting to lift your spirits, if it's starting to open up your heart, if you feel that the message of Different Us needs to be shared with someone in need, we encourage you, if you haven't had the opportunities to do so, to subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel, and to share this very special trolley stop that you are now enjoying. That is episode number 161 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. As we were talking in the PR from the Heart Green Room, Katrina, this book really touched my heart on so many different levels, whether it be the little ones going to St. Mary's primary school, and the name of my high school when I lived out in the Buffalo area was St. Mary's. Just so many different things that really helped me to remember, like, wow, I've come so far and I'm unique and special just the way that I am. Whenever we always start off a Children's Book Spotlight series episode, we always like to be able to connect with an author's origin story, because it obviously began for you at some point in time when you knew that a large part of your work, your purpose, your mission was for the children, because obviously it took some time, obviously, for this message to be able to be flourishing and shared in the way in which it needs to be shared. For those of our listeners and viewers and our friends and neighbors who are learning about you, your work, your story for this, just through our Children's Book Spotlight series, could you let us know really where it all began and when you knew that a large part of your work was meant here for the children?
Actually, when it all began, I would say it was over 22 years ago when I was stationed at Ramstein Air Base when I was in the U.S. Air Force. And I remember going to visit a friend of mine. She was sitting in our office. And through my spiritual eye, I looked across the hall. And on the door, it read Dr. Katrina King. And I couldn't see the last name through my spiritual eye. And I said, Doctor, I said, and I had no plans on going back to school at that time. At the time, I only had my bachelor's degree. And the title, Different Us, came to me. I couldn't tell you where it came from, other than the fact that it was inspired. 22 years would pass, and I would be sleeping, and I had a dream about writing the children's book. Prior to then, I couldn't put the words together at all. But when I woke up from that dream, every single word flowed, and I began to write. So I say that to say that everything is about divine timing. Sometimes, there's nothing more powerful than a dream whose time has come to pass. So for someone who may have hope out there that, one day they'll accomplish this, that, and the other, hold on to that dream, hold on to that goal, because timing is of essence. And when that time comes, there's nothing that's going to be able to stop it.
I get goosebumps hearing all of that. I think that, we're already starting things off on such a positive note. And I think that that's really important because, as we communicate about different us momentarily, the little ones are moving through their own emotions and feelings. In many respects, they're picked on, even to a certain extent, they're bullied. And I can just, again, envision that there's many children, and even us as big kids, right? If we're feeling insecure or we're moving through some heavy emotions and feelings, we're not feeling like we're good enough, it's very easy to think, man, that dream of mine isn't going to happen, or it seems so far away, or maybe I should give up, maybe I should throw in the towel. And it's obviously so important that we don't, because like we all have inherent worth and value. We all have special gifts and talents, and you're able to see that through all of the characters in Different Us: Malaya, Jacob, Sarah, and Samson. And of course, we're going to be sharing more about all four kids momentarily as well. Yes. Whenever I feel that God provides the opportunities for something to come to fruition, whatever the vision necessarily looks like, we're reminded that we are human and we can move through those emotions and feelings like, oh my gosh, I need to do this. At which point there can be challenges, difficulties, obstacles, problems, stressors, troubles, worries, you name it. We're spiritual beings, we're divine, but we're also human beings as well, too. In terms of when you knew that this message needed to be shared, that you were going to be writing this book, and even in the process of putting the book together and sharing it before it was published, and even to now when it's being shared, what are some of the specific challenges and difficulties of note that you feel that you experienced along the way on your path? And what were some of the things that helped you to get through to the other side of those?
I wanted to be able to speak to every child. I wanted almost every aspect of a child to be represented in the characters and in the character situation in my book. I mean, from the biracial child to the bully. One of the things that helped me press through was prayer and meditation. You know, not just being able to talk to God, but be able to sit still and listen. And through my listening came the revelation of the words that I was to put into the book, and what types of difficulties and challenges that each of the four main characters would have.
I'm so glad that you're communicating about prayer and meditation, because we're all on a path. Sometimes people may classify themselves more as religious, sometimes people may classify themselves as spiritual, sometimes it
Definitely
might be
spiritual.
a hybrid of the above. But it is important to have a strong connection to yourself and to your faith, whatever that necessarily looks like, whether it be faith in the world, whether it be faith in God, whether it be faith in yourself. There's kind of a positive intertwinement between all of them, so to speak. So I'm really glad that you were able to take the time to trust yourself, because as we were communicating in the PR from the Heart Green Room, this isn't just, I mean, this is a very deep dive for a very short book. It
Yes.
talks about so much. And I think,
Yes.
the way in which, and not to necessarily get ahead of myself, one of the things that I really loved about your book is the fact that each character was given the opportunity to bear his or her soul, to be able to share themselves so that they can be seen and reflected and heard. It's very easy just to write a children's book and be like, okay, I've got X number of pages, X number of words that I can write. And then sometimes people just want to rush, like, okay, we're going to go to this and we're going to go to this.
Right.
It was really like the painting of a picture. This is almost like a Picasso masterpiece for kids. I've never phrased a children's book like that, but
Thank you.
I can tell the thought and the care that you gave to all of that. If
Yeah.
you could kind of take us inside, before we dive inside the pages of your book, could you share with us the process once you knew that this book actually had to be written? What were some of the sources of inspiration that you had? What did the overall process of creation look like for you? Because I can tell that creation is something that you very much value and connect with.
Yes, absolutely. I can share that all of us as adults, that there's an inner child, and I tapped into that inner child through the experiences that I had as a young girl going through elementary school, through middle school, and through high school. There were times that I was not treated as fairly, or I consider myself being bullied, because I was never in the inner circle of the very how would I say it, renowned or popular girls. Another one of my inspirations also was thinking about my son when he went through school and the things that he went through in terms of bullying and not being treated fairly. One of the things that come to mind is when we were moving back from California, Fresno, California, back to Alabama. He had to be around, I'd say, 8 years old at the time. And he came home and he's like, well, Mom, I met this new friend. He never bothered to say, her race. And then he said, but the kids tease me and they call me names. Why do they call me names? She just happened to be a Caucasian girl, and he befriended her. And I had to go into explaining uh, Southern uh, culture to him, and civil rights in the deep South and that type of thing. And it was a very hurtful thing, but it was heart wrenching to think that he felt at 8 years old that he couldn't be friends with a person of another race just because people of his own race were teasing him and making him feel bad. Had another situation even when he was in kindergarten, when he was bullied and beat up by 11 12 kids outside of school while he was waiting to go in, just because he didn't wear the same type of brand name shoes that they did. So it's my experiences and a combination of his experiences brought about this process of how I would lay out the storyline for each of these characters.
Thank you for your vulnerability in sharing all of that, because It sounds like in many respects that you turned the pain that you saw and felt from what your little one was moving through into your your passion, your purpose, and to be able to
Absolutely.
ensure that this was reflected in a way that, again, no matter whatever the situation is, whatever the life experience is, the present life experience that the little one is moving through, they
Yes.
can connect with these different characters. And
Yes.
especially, as I communicated with you previously, like, I saw different aspects of all the characters within myself, where it's like, wow, like I can get where Malia's coming from, I can get where
Yes.
Jacob's coming from, I can get where Sarah's coming from, I can get where Sammy's coming from. We appreciate all of you spending some quality time with us here. It is the PR from the Heart holiday season celebration. It is National Family Literacy Month, and this is episode number 161 of the PR from the Heart Children's Book Spotlight Series. Joining us is our featured guest, Dr. Katrina King Evans. We are almost ready to dive into the pages of her brand new children's book, Different Us, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Page Publishing. We encourage you to head on over to Amazon.com if that's your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, and to purchase your copy of Different Us while there if you feel guided to do so. That's one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Katrina, to let her know that she is doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books, and also for all educators that are out there, teachers, principals, and librarians, not only in the state of Alabama, not only across the country, but around the world. If you're interested in facilitating a virtual or in-person author school visit with Katrina in the process, we've included her social media platforms. Primarily, the best way to connect with her is through Facebook to schedule a virtual or in-person author school visit for the forthcoming new year. Because again, one of the great feelings is being able to share this message. And this message is very much needed, especially with everything that we've gone through over the course of the past several years, Katrina. We had everything from racial issues, civil unrest, the pandemic, the election. I mean, all of these things, and I can just imagine being a kid. Like, I was born in 1981, not to outdate myself, so to speak, but like, I mean, I moved through my own things as a kid, but I don't, kids have moved through so much over the course of these past several years. I think before we actually get into your book itself, how meaningful is it for you as a mother, as a children's author, just someone who really has a strong connectivity to kids? How important is it for you to be able to share your message at this particular point in time, knowing that it's helping more people, especially little ones, than you realize?
I can't even begin to articulate just how important at this moment in time that the message of diversity, the message of caring for oneself, the message of self acceptance, the message of being different is okay. It's a beautiful thing. Is communicated at this point. Um, it could have been any other time, but especially coming out of the lockdown and COVID and everything, we're going back toward more so of a normal day in life, and it's an opportune time for people to dive in deep and really explore those things that we aren't that aren't talked about very often. I often say that those things that we fear, we mock those things which we fear, but we need to confront those things in order to move forward, in order to create a change in the lives of children.
I'm so glad that you touched upon those specific points as well, too, because again, no one was unscathed from the pandemic. Everyone moved through something. For some people, it was just a little small minor thing. For some people, it was a complete uproot, whether it be loss of job, loss of a loved one, or series of loved ones.
Yeah.
And again, thankfully, we're beginning to be on the other end of this. And one of the quotes, it's interesting because you had mentioned, especially being in Alabama, and your state has gone through just so much alone in terms of civil rights. I
Yes.
go back to one of the most poignant scenes in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, where you have Fred Rogers and Officer Clemens, and they're in the kiddie pool together. And Officer Clemens just wants to take the time and just rest his feet. And of course, there was a point in time where African Americans and Caucasians could not be in the same swimming pools together. And,
Absolutely.
as part of the Mr. Rogers documentary, Won't You Be My Neighbor, Francois Clemens even said that, Fred Rogers thought that that was ridiculous. So he invited Officer Clemens to be able to be in the same kiddie pool to just relax his feet. And even when the time came for him to be able to, dry his feet off, Mr. Rogers said, "You can use my towel." And it just shows the fact that in your own way with your children's book, you're providing a resource of care. I always mention a lot of things about Mr. Rogers on the children's book Spotlight series. There was a time where he was on, and it's a very well-known, it's a very well-known time and space where Mr. Rogers actually spoke in front of Capitol Hill, and he was trying to secure $20 million worth of funding for PBS. And when he was speaking to Senator John Pastore, he had mentioned to him, he felt that his program, he used the term, was a resource of care. And I really connect with that term because that's what your children's book is. It's a resource of care, especially right now and moving forth, leading into the holidays, leading into the new year, to let little ones know that they're not alone, that they have a shoulder to be able to lean on, and they have more support than they actually realize. Now comes one of our favorite times in the children's book Spotlight series, where we dive into the pages of our newest heartfelt children's books that we share from some of our favorite neighbors in the PR from the Heart family. Of course, one of our favorite expressions also in the program, we don't like to give away the whole kit and caboodle on the children's book Spotlight series. Obviously, we encourage those who are watching, those who are listening, to be able to purchase their copy of Different Us. But to set the scene, your book features 4 friends, as I'd alluded to previously: Malaya, Jacob, Sarah, and Sammy. And they're all 5th graders at St. Mary's Primary School. And it's a very impressionable time for a child. When you're in 5th grade, it's like, okay, you're looking, it's like, wow, like I'm going to be ruling the school. I remember when I was like in 8th grade and I took the bus home, I'm like, I get to sit in the back of the bus. Like, how amazing is that, right? But, 5th grade is there's a lot of changes that little ones are moving through emotionally, physically, spiritually as well, too. Could you share with us, without again giving away the whole kit and caboodle, the journey that Malaya, Jacob, Sammy, and Sarah experienced, and some of the specific messages that really stand out from your story that you wanted to be able to convey for children, parents, families, and educators in the process?
Okay, so basically, Different Us, it's an uplifting short story addressing childhood bullying, while offering an empowering message of self-acceptance. And those best friends, those characters were Malia, as you mentioned, Jacob, Sarah, and Samson. It was important for me to highlight each one because I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss a child out there that may have identified with something that was going on with the struggles that each one of them had. Interestingly enough, I have people that ask me, well, what happened to the Black girl? You didn't put a Black girl in there. You only put a biracial girl. Why is that? What type of connection do you have, to biracial children? And I said, historically, we can go back in history, but as of today, none at all. It was important, like I said, it was important for me to show aspects of every child and show that they were represented and that they could see themselves. I believe that representation is very, very important. But personally, I believe that representation goes beyond skin color. I believe it dives into identity, identity being characteristics, determining who or what a person is. And I wanted for Black and brown girls to be able to see themselves through the struggle of a biracial child.
There's so much to be able to unpack from that alone, because again, it's a matter of, like, I can just envision when you're doing your part to formulate this message, share it, and it's kind of like when you're spell checking a paper, and it's like,
yes,
okay, is everything in there? You want to make sure that everything is in there, and it's a matter
yes,
of making sure. The phrase that comes to mind is that you didn't want no child to be left behind.
I really didn't. And when you ask about challenges, one of my biggest challenges was, how do I make this book short enough, but yet long enough to get my message through without losing the child's attention span? I consider it a very short book, but if you just look at the length of it, you'll miss where I'm coming from. You'll miss some lessons. You'll miss things that are very critical that's going on in the lives of children if you look at the length. But the length was intentional so that young children wouldn't miss the story.
Mm. This is something that, especially the mean kids at the school
Mhm.
refer to the kids as the odd squad. And
Yes,
that's a very, again, like I can just envision, being a kid. And this even again brought me back to my experience growing up.
definitely.
I remember when I actually went to, I was in one school in the Buffalo area, and then for 2 years I was at another school before I went back to the school that I was at previously.
Yes.
Um, and what I was moving through is when I was at that school for 2 years, I really felt like a fish out of water. There
Yes.
were kids there whose parents were doctors and podiatrists and lawyers. It was a very like affluent kind of school. And I
Yes.
came from a middle class family on my end of things. And even though, like, maybe in certain aspects, I kind of felt like judged, or like, hey, how come your family isn't doing this, or how come you're not there, so to speak. But even I can remember in high school, even I always wanted to do my part to be able to fit in, whether it
In.
be with, the football players or the basketball players or things of that nature. And it's like, it took me a long time to be
Mhm.
comfortable in my skin. I can admit that this is something that I'm still working on my
Right.
end of things. And I think that this is where it's like, I feel 100%, Katrina, that children's
Mhm.
books are actually disguised as children's books, and they're actually meant for us as adults, right? But like, this is where it's like, even books that come into my life, it's a matter of like, oh, okay, interesting timing to be able to have the message of being comfortable in your
Your
own
own skin.
skin. That's
Yes,
something
absolutely.
I feel it makes sense to be able to unpack a little bit more. During the children's book spotlight series, we always like to provide some supportive information that parents, caregivers, grandparents, educators can immediately extract after watching the program and be able to help implement it into the hearts and minds and the lives of the children and the little ones that are in their lives. How can we help to do our part to help our little ones become more comfortable in their own skin, especially now? What comes to mind?
That's a very fair and just question. I believe, John, that it begins with the parents. When I was younger, my grandmother used to have this little sign up in her house in the small country town of Marion, Alabama, and it said that charity starts at home and spread abroad. And parents or caregivers have to start being that example. They can't wait to send their children off to school and expect the child to learn everything that he or she is supposed to learn. It has to start with being the example. um, I believe, I taught my son growing up that, people are people, but people will treat you differently because you are a young Black boy. But exposing him to people of diverse backgrounds and cultures was very important to me. It was important to me because I didn't want him growing up in a world where he was ignorant of other people's unique qualities. So what can parents do? Parents can start with themselves. They can begin exposing their children to other children who perhaps don't act the way that they do, aren't gifted in the same ways as they may be. May Maybe they look different. Maybe they're another race. Maybe they play instruments and your child doesn't. And maybe the parent should even uh, reassess their circle, because children are watching what you say in your homes. and they're watching what type of friends that mommy and daddy has as well.
There's this is I always love our children's book spotlight series episodes because like they're really deep dives, and there's so many parents, especially right now, thankfully, again, we're on the other side of the pandemic, but parents and
Yes.
educators, they took an emotional toll. And
Mhm.
so they're, parents and educators, I can't speak from the perspective of one, even though I do have obviously friends of mine and colleagues of mine that are parents and that are educators in the process.
Yes,
Just knowing the fact that they don't have to do it alone, because there's
absolutely.
many parents that might feel taxed and stressed and wondering like, how's my little one going to get past this, whatever it is, if it's a
Right.
simple teasing, or if it's like someone's literally being bullied, like physical
Mhm.
being bullied. um if there's little ones out there that are
Yes.
struggling, for those that are struggling and that are wondering, is this going to get better? How is it going to get better? When is it going to get better? I'm praying for a miracle, but I don't necessarily know that it's going to happen. Who are
Right.
struggling with self-acceptance,
Mhm.
self-confidence, self-love, being comfortable in your own skin.
Mhm.
What would you wish to communicate with those little ones right now?
I would say that there is a bigger voice within, and parents and teachers have to be open to that voice. Say something. It's not enough to be quiet. When I was in the military, I learned that, well, if it wasn't written, it didn't happen. Well, if you don't voice it, it didn't happen. Say something to somebody. Say something to your parents. Say something to your teachers. Say something to your librarian. Perhaps it's the lady in the cafeteria that's serving food. Don't be afraid to speak up, because it's your voice that will be the saving grace in your situation.
That's something that I really appreciate you communicating it in the way in which you are, because, little ones, a lot of times, they need someone to serve as a mirror, as a
Mhm.
reflection to them, where it's like, especially if a child has been taught to not speak up, or if you speak up, if that you're out of line kind of
Right.
thing. And so I think that that's really important, as well as on the back of the book. This is a very, very, very powerful message. Again, this is a small book, but it packs a big punch, so to speak, and that's what I love
Absolutely.
about Different Us. It reflects being different holds more power than you can possibly imagine. And again, like, one of the things I always have this picture. This is, I think, my preschool me, and I have it right here. I had a whole mess of hair and a clip-on tie and a vest and
So
whatnot. And it's
cute.
like, if I like there, little me is still present. It's like, man, if I
Yeah.
only knew this at like 5 or 6
Right.
or 13 or 16, could you speak to that message? Because I think, again, depending on what your belief system is, depending upon what you're taught, depending upon what your experiences have been in life, could you speak to us about what being different means today, and why it's really paramount to be different in a world that's just conditioned to try to, you have to have the same phone, you have to dress the same way, you have to, have the same number of social media followers? Can you speak
Right.
to that aspect of being different?
I guess that leads into my natural speech about diversity. What is diversity? You talk about the practice or the quality of including or involving people from a range, of social and ethnic backgrounds and of different genders. Diversity is important because it widens our viewpoint on things. I would speak to the different child, different meaning, um, actually, it could span a wide variety of things. You could be different not only just because of the way that you look, your skin color. You could be different because of your talents. Perhaps there's a singer in that little you. Perhaps there's this great musician in the little you. Perhaps there's this Einstein, great STEM student in that little you. Different can mean things that aren't looked at as the same as someone else. And because you have that thing inside of you that's different from someone else, it doesn't make you bad, or it doesn't limit your qualities. It causes you to have a platform, a space that you don't even realize that you could stand up on, and you can promote that thing, and it becomes the best thing next to sliced bread. But you have to start believing in yourself, believing in that inner voice that says, I am good enough. I don't have to be like Susie or Bobby or Tracy or Maria, but I'm little Malia, or I'm Jacob, and I'm different, but you can capitalize, you can make more of who you are by embracing how God made you from the beginning, because the way that you were made, it wasn't by accident. It was for a purpose. And it's about you finding that purpose within yourself.
That's also, and I feel that you're doing that through Different Us is, once little ones remember the truth with a capital T, that they're loved and special just the way that they are, that they
Yes.
have unique skills and gifts and talents, then it's like, okay, so I can fulfill my mission, and
Yeah.
and I can move forward, and things can get better, and they will get better. It's one of my it's more of a spiritual book than religious, but there's a beautiful book
Yes.
called A Course in Miracles. And it defines a miracle as a shift in perspective from fear to love.
Mm.
And I love
That's
that
powerful. That is
because
so powerful.
it's a matter of, if just shifting something from a vibration of fear or doubt and just shifting it to, like, not even just optimism, but I always like to classify: you have hope, you have faith, and you have trust.
Mm.
Many times I'll find myself like going to the grocery store, to some place like that, and I can feel if someone's moving through something, and I'll go up to a person and say, I feel something really good is going to happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting because, almost like clockwork, the number one response that I hear from that person is, I sure hope so.
Yes.
And I feel like hope is important, but hope is an indicator that it's like, but it's kind of like, well, what, there's a likelihood that it might not happen. So you've got hope, and then you've got faith.
Mm-hmm.
And then faith kind of brings things to trust. And then I feel that there's a knowing. So you have that knowing, like, it's up to us to be able to communicate to kids, to help them connect to their knowing that they're loved and they're special, and that they have these unique skills and gifts and talents, and that they have inherent worth and value in the process. We're beginning to wind down our time with our featured guest here on episode number 161 of the PR from the Heart Children's Book Spotlight Series, children's author Dr. Katrina King Evans. We are thoroughly enjoying her brand new children's book, Different Us. It is now available. If Amazon is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, you can head on over to Amazon.com, purchase your copy of Different Us. While there, you can leave a 5-star review if you feel guided to do so. That's one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Katrina, to let her know that she is doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, and educators, and for those who love great children's books in the process. If you are a teacher, principal, librarian, educator in the state of Alabama, in this beautiful country of ours, or any place around the world, and you would like to facilitate a virtual or in-person author school visit with Katrina, you can connect with her on Facebook. But again, we've included all of her social media platforms so that you can continue this wonderful and amazing conversation post children's book spotlight series as well too. As we begin to wind down our time, Katrina, I just wanted to be able to share some of my favorite passages within the book. First off, I was curious, when the little ones are all together and they're toasting, are those root beer floats? Because it looks like root beer floats almost.
They can be root beer floats, they can be strawberry floats, but whatever, it had cream on top, and that just made it all the better.
Because it's interesting. I was at Disneyland for my 41st birthday back in August.
Yes.
And there's this wonderful place. I'm not sure if you've ever been to Disneyland, but like shortly when you
Yes.
walk in there's this place in itself. It's like an old-fashioned ice cream parlor almost. and they have root beer floats. And I asked myself, I said, when was the last time I had a root beer float? And I honestly couldn't even remember. I don't drink root beer. I really don't have ice cream all that much, but I'm like, you know what? It's my birthday. Darn it, I'm going to have a root beer float. So I just loved that illustration as well, too. When Sarah was bearing her soul and she was communicating how it was making her feel when she was picked on, like you could literally, I love the illustrations in your book because you can literally connect with the emotions, the feelings, and the experiences of what the little ones are actually moving through. And then, of
Yeah.
course, you know, if you're big fans of mac and cheese, on page 13, you can actually see, I believe it's Sammy's mother holding
Yes.
mac and cheese bombs as well, too. One
Yes.
specific thing that I wanted to call to attention to was the very end of the book. And just to be able to share this last passage in the story when it says, we realized that day that no matter how different we were from one another, God doesn't make any mistakes in his creation. It was then and there that the way that I began to think about myself changed. I became a different me. And that day, as we leaned on one another and took the time to better understand one another's struggle together, we became a different us. And I just love how it's a matter of like you're blending the connection that each individual child has and help to bring them together as well too, because it's important for kids to know that they're not alone, again, that they don't have to move through this together, and that we're more alike than we
Then we
are
are
different.
different. Absolutely. Absolutely. And and that moment is very powerful because, you know, you talk about hope, faith, and trust. There's something powerful that when hope, faith, and trust begin to merge upon each other, that
Mm-hmm.
things begin to happen. And that leads me into my second book, which I won't talk very much about, but I will say that the name of it is Different Us Junior High School. And it talks about the types of things you asked about. What types of things can children do to, you know, to come more into themselves and start getting stronger, you know, with each other and, you know, with their friendships and within the self. That's what Different Us Junior High School does when they go to sixth grade. It talks about those things that students can do to begin to flourish in their differences and make an impact on this world.
I love that phrase, flourish in your differences.
Oh, yes.
Because again, I think that, you know, many of us, we spent so much time and space and brain bandwidth thinking, okay, I'm different, that's a bad thing. And, you know, what does this mean for me? And, you know, it can kind of create a system of beliefs thereafter kind of thing. So just again, I love the way in which you're communicating that. There's two beautiful ways that we always close out each children's book spotlight series. We like giving a little tip of the cap to, of course, the aforementioned Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, the host of the long-running children's television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. In many respects, he did this in different ways, whether it be through the neighborhood, whether it be through different talks, speeches, commencement addresses all throughout the country. Most notably, Katrina, before when he received his Lifetime Achievement Award at the Daytime Emmys, shortly before he passed from stomach cancer. And he always kept the time, whether it be 15 seconds, 30 seconds, or a full minute, 60 seconds. He encouraged us to remember those who helped love us into being. And I always get chills talking about that because that was his way of saying, remember those people on your path who helped you to remember that being different isn't necessarily a bad thing. Those neighbors on your path, whether it be family members, friends, passersby, that help
Yes.
that help you remember of your inherent worth and value, that you're loved and you're special just the way that you are. Who would you like to take the time to publicly recognize here on episode number 161 of the Children's Book Spotlight series that helped love you, Dr. Katrina King Evans, into being?
I would say the person that I'd like to highlight and acknowledge would be my mother. Along the way, she was always there to inspire me, to correct me, to just build me up. And but she would be that person because she was always there and she never left my side, no matter what I went through. So I'd like to highlight my mother, Shirley King. She's an awesome woman, and I was glad to have her. I'm glad to have her as my mother.
Thank you for sharing that as well too. And it's that goes back then to what Mr. Rogers said is that no matter where that person or persons are, whether they're near or far, whether they're in heaven or still with us in the physical realm, that those people are smiling, knowing the impact, the positive impact, the real difference that they actually made in your life. We also we're very big Disney fans here at the Children's Book Spotlight series, and one of the things that reminds me of is that we have the abilities. We all have dreams, desires, goals, ambitions, things that we want, wishes that we want to be fulfilled. And so we have the abilities to bring that to form and shape, to help those that are in our lives, those that we love, care about, those that we're called to serve, to help them bring their dreams, their desires, their goals to life. So as a little tip of the cap, we go back to the Disney animated classic from 1992. We go back to the late Robin Williams, who voiced the Genie of the Lamp, Disney's Aladdin. We have a little segment here called Wishes Fulfilled. We have a little segment that's entitled 3 Wishes. So we are doing our part now today to be able to help your wishes become fulfilled. So you're probably wondering, it's like, you know, a lot of authors, when they join me on the program, it's like we get to the 3 wishes segment. It's like, wait a minute, I'm getting 3 wishes. I thought this was an interview to talk about my children's book. And it's like, this really is you've given so much to your family, to children, parents, families, educators in Alabama, all across the country, around the world. So it's your time to receive, Katrina. So these wishes, they can be for yourself, they can be for your family, they can be for the children of the world, but you are being given 3 wishes. What would those wishes be?
One wish I would say is that I'd like my messages within Different Us to be spread across the nation, to be spread internationally among people of diverse cultures and nationalities. I wish to be able to put this book on a media platform, even to turn it into cartoons, so that children can relate even on a different level, beyond just the book. I wish that for every child, every grandparent, every parent, every teacher, every individual that opens up the book, that they would be blessed beyond measure, and that they would see and experience the intent of my heart that was put into this very short book. Because if you look at the length, again, I say you'll miss the storyline. But there's so much in it, and that you would open your heart, and that you would be blessed, and your family would be blessed as a result of reading it.
And that it didn't take me very long. I wanted to obviously read the full book, but I connected with it with your heart and the intentionality, the heartfelt intention that you were bringing to the story. And I'm just so glad that we're having the opportunities to communicate and to share this message. It's just so wonderful, which, by the way, is a little FYI. You're going to be hearing a little bit more about Different Us through PR from the Heart. We are super excited because as part of our Neighborly Reviews bookcast with David Newell, who played the beloved Mr. McFeely on the long-running children's television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, with David and I are going to be reviewing and sharing Different Us on the November installment of the PR from the Heart Neighborly Reviews bookcast. So depending upon when you are watching, episode number 161 of the Children's Book Spotlight series, that is either now available, or either will be available or is now available. Stay connected, of course, to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel and our official website at PR from the Heart, which is prfromtheheart.com. Again, we encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow shining stars, to be able to head on over to Amazon.com if that's your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. You can head on over to Amazon and leave a 5-star review after purchasing Different Us if you feel, again, guided to do so. One of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Katrina, to let her know that she's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, those who love great children's books. Of course, Different Us is also available on other platforms as well, too. So if you prefer to go to Apple, if you prefer to go to Barnes & Noble, it's also available at other platforms as well. One of the other ways that you can pledge your support, because we do believe that the pillars of our community are children's and independent bookstores and libraries. One of the ways you can also pledge your support for Katrina's is by going to your local library. Obviously, if you want to be able to have a different stock, let them know that this book needs to be stocked. If you have a favorite children's bookstore, independent bookstore, this is just one of the many ways that you can support, especially self-published authors whose works are very important. So we wanted to be able to create some awareness for that as well, too. For all educators, not only in the beautiful state of Alabama, but also states across the country, and of course, all around the world. If you are an educator, teacher, principal, librarian, and you would like to facilitate a virtual or in-person author school visit with Katrina, you can connect with her via Facebook. And again, we've included all of her social media platforms and the link to be able to purchase different in the description below, so that, of course, you can continue this conversation post-Children's Book Spotlight series in the process. This has been a magical trolley step. There's always magic and miracles that happen around the holiday season. It is oh so true. Raise your hand if you have had fun on episode number 161 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. Hands from Katrina, hands from myself, hands from the little ones on screen, which always means mission accomplished, job well done. But we are so not complete by far with this year of 2022. I know that we're getting excited for 2023 and the wonderful things that 2023 brings, but there are many more magical trolley stops here to come on the Children's Book Spotlight series. So if you are a children's author and you would like to be able to share your inspiring story and the release of your brand new book and become a featured guest on the Children's Book Spotlight series, you can connect with us via our official website, prfromtheheart.com, or any of our social media platforms that you now see on screen. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at PR From The Heart. We briefly alluded to this beforehand, but if you are a children's author and would love to have your brand new children's book be featured on the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, again, David Newell, play the beloved Mr. McFeely on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, joins me each and every month as we deliver the newest heartfelt reviews from the newest children's books, from the shining stars in the kidlit community at PR From The Heart. So if you are a children's author and would like to have David and I share your brand new children's book and to be able to have that be featured on a forthcoming episode of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, you know where to connect with us, prfromtheheart.com, and any of our social media platforms as well. And again, episode number 21 of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast for the month of November, the November installment of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. David and I were super excited to be able to share and review different as well. And there are many more surprises that are in store. The Story Time with Mr. John series, the children's book amazingness that we share with the little ones out here in San Diego. We're going to be sharing more details on that. And of course, the official television book review segment of PR From The Heart, Empowering Reads for Kids. Stay tuned for more details on that as well. There are some very special announcements to come leading into the holiday season and beyond as we start off the new year of 2023. And of course, if you are interested in more information on how we can be of service to you at PR From The Heart, if you are interested in facilitating a featured television interview or a book media tour in a city of your choosing, you can schedule your courtesy connection call by heading on over to our official website, prfromtheheart.com. Let us see how we can be of service to you. One more time, we encourage you, if you already haven't had the opportunities to do so, to head on over to Amazon.com, purchase your copy of Different Us, and again, to leave a 5-star review. One of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Katrina, to let her know that she's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books. And again, as this has been a magical trolley stop, if it has lifted your spirits, if it's inspired you, if you're saying, now, Katrina, John, I'm feeling better about myself. I'm embracing my differences. Heck, I'm even celebrating them. And I'm encouraging my fellow friends and neighbors to do so in the process. If you feel that this message especially needs to be shared with someone in need, young or old, that is struggling with self-confidence, self-esteem, and being comfortable in their own skin, we're encouraging you to embrace all of that by sharing episode number 161 on your favorite social media platforms of your choosing and subscribing to PR From The Heart's official YouTube channel. Now, as we hear the trolley, that means that it is time to go. So we want to thank you for your continued support of PR From The Heart. And we want to thank you for your continued support of the Children's Book Spotlight series for your continued support of all the amazing children's authors and illustrators such as Katrina, who again are bringing and sharing these important messages that need to be conveyed and spoken to the hearts and minds of our little ones, especially as of right now. For your continued support of the pillars of our community, as I mentioned before, local libraries, children's and independent bookstores, and above all else, we want to thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world. Lastly, one final tip of the cap to our favorite neighbor, Mr. Rogers. He reminded us in different ways, shapes, and forms of our inherent worth and our inherent value. He had a very unique way of expressing how he cared about us. Somehow Katrina and Mr. Rogers weighed 143 pounds for his entire natural adult life. In his own private numerology, that was his way of saying, I love you. There's one letter in I, 4 letters in love, 3 letters in you. So a little tip of the cap to Mr. Rogers. And since Katrina was very kind enough to give us some of her free time this week, our way of reminding you of your worth and your value is 243. As there's 2 letters in we, 4 letters in love, 3 letters in you. We are reminding you that you are perfect, that you are whole, that you are healthy, you are complete, that you are loved and you are special, just the way that you are. That we like you and we love you just the way that you are. This has been a wonderful trolley stop. So once again, we want to extend our thanks to Dr. Katrina King Evans for spending some quality time with us here in our neighborhood. Different us. Take the time to read this. This is a very, very, very beautiful and again, much needed message. And we're so glad that we have the opportunities to share it. But again, you're going to be seeing and hearing more from Dr. Katrina King Evans and PR from the Heart. So for Dr. Katrina King Evans, for myself, John Masiulionis, thank you for spending some time with us here in our neighborhood. And once again, we want to thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Goodbye for now.